primary concept with roasting coffee is the seed itself. Let's dive into the seed and see what we can understand about it and how that later will translate over into roasting. A seed is a storage unit for food, for a future plant. That storage unit is built out of all kinds of different compartments that we call cells. Those compartments are blocked off into cubicles, and the cubicle structure is made out of a product we call cellulose. It's a very fibrous molecule that weaves its way throughout the entire cell matrix of the seed itself. Inside of that cell matrix, you find the cell membrane, kind of a fleshy layer. And then within that cell membrane are lots of liquids, organelles, molecules that are both small and large, and little organelles that are changing those smaller molecules into larger molecules. Of course, we know that the way the plant works is it takes sunlight and carbon dioxide and water, puts those together, creates little simple sugars. Those simple sugars move through the plant, and they end up in the seed where different organelles will recreate those small sugar molecules into large molecules. Those large molecules then are not able to move outside of that cell structure. They get locked in there. So a seed's job is to lock more of that material into itself so that it stores it up, almost like a locker, that when a new little plant starts to grow, it will start unlocking those large molecules and once again breaking them down into small, usable pieces of energy, once again into sugar. Once that seed is ready to germinate, the seed is doing another function. It's protecting. It's doing its best to make sure that that tiny little plant that's growing inside of it is safe and secure until it's gone into its environment and secured itself away from that storage unit of the seed. So understanding this conceptually will start helping us to unlock how we can break down these large molecules with heat into the smaller molecules that we need to create our coffee beverage, coffee. So the way that coffee is unique as a seed is it's storing hundreds of different types of molecules. Some seeds only store a few different major types of molecules, but since coffee is so dynamic and diverse in the types of molecules that it stores, we know that as we begin to change these molecules, we're breaking them down into what we call flavonoids. And there are hundreds of flavonoids that coffee can create. The way that we break down these large molecules will determine what flavonoids there are at the end, and the way that the plant itself has put those larger molecules together will give us a baseline from which we'll be able to develop new flavonoids. So for instance, one large molecule may have the potential to break down into several different kinds of flavors. However, the way that we break that molecule down will determine what those flavors specifically will be. To use a seed that is not coffee as an example, let's talk about barley for a moment. Barley is taking sugar molecules and storing them inside of its cell matrix as starch. Starch is not something that is water soluble, so the water is not going to pull that starch back out of that seed. It's now stuck in that seed until something happens to it. What the plant will then do is go through a process called hydrolysis, where chemically water is used to sever those large molecules of starch and break those down into sugar molecules. However, with the coffee seed, we're not going to use processes of hydrolysis or chemical processes. We're going to use processes of pyrolysis or cooking processes. The coffee seed is so unique, so vast in its potential flavors, but those flavors are not unlocked quite so easily. We have to add heat. There are a lot of determining factors as to what the potential flavor in a particular seed will be, such as the variety of the seed, where the coffee plant itself was grown, how much access to water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight the coffee had. All of these factors are what we would call terroir. Along with these, there are a lot of social factors or choices that people that are growing the coffee have made that will affect the seed as well. Things like processing. Was the coffee left in a bath of enzymatic activity during the washing process that imparted a lot of new enzymes into the coffee? Was the coffee dried as a naturally processed seed, and did it soak in the fruit flavor of the coffee cherry itself? There are a lot of these factors that all culminate together into what that individual seed will be that you will end up roasting. Some of these factors of how the coffee was grown and what type of coffee was grown will determine the density of that coffee seed. What is density? Well, it's how much mass over how much volume the coffee is exhibiting. So if you have a very small seed that's very heavy, it's very dense. If you have a very large seed that is heavy, it is also dense. If you have a very large seed that is not heavy at all, that is a very low density coffee. So for instance, that coffee seed that has spent a lot of time putting a lot of those large non-soluble molecules into its cellular matrix will most likely be a much more dense coffee. A coffee seed that has not spent that kind of time to pack in all kinds of molecules into its cellular matrix will have a much more open matrix and therefore be a lot lighter, or what we would refer to as a lot less dense. And this will affect not only how the coffee absorbs heat and changes during the heating process, but it also is a direct impact on what and how much flavor that coffee has potentially stored within itself. It's important for you to understand what the density of your coffee is and to build trends within your roasting program to show how to roast certain coffees with certain density levels. I know that's a lot of information about this tiny little coffee seed, but we're barely brushing the surface. Hopefully we've launched you into a head start to understanding the seed itself, and that you'll go after this video and study up even more. Look at the coffee seed as the botanical thing that it is. Understanding seeds in general, understanding the botany of what a seed is and how that seed functions will help you understand coffee seed better and hopefully help you be a better coffee roaster.